Thank you. And when they put me on the stage, she said, "I know you're a roamer. You don't want a podium." So they're right. I don't use podiums. Um, Partly because I'm short, the podium always comes up to here on me. I started a nonprofit in 2004, OATS, Older Adults Technology Services, and we started teaching free classes. I remember I went to a housing organization in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. I sat down with the Tenants Association leaders. They were all in their 60s and 70s. And we started practicing teaching classes in their center. And it was a little bit of a design approach. You know, I know we have an engineer here in the back. It was a little bit of a design thinking approach. What would help you get online? What are the barriers? What do you want to learn? What's the method that works best for people? And one of the things that we learned, which is one of my takeaways that I want you to remember here, is older adults had a different learning methodology than younger people when it came to technology.
How is everyone feeling today?
The classes Dublin is talking about are offered here at Senior Planet. It's an organization that's been providing technology programs for people over 60 for free for 2 decades.
I'm exploring, I'm enjoying, and I'm having fun at the same time. The participation has skyrocketed. For the vast majority of older adults, participating in a healthy way with technology is essential to their mental health. The principal obstacle for mental health for so many older folks is the decline in their contacts with friends, family, community, and the need to reestablish and reweave those connections. And technology has to be a critical tool for that in the modern age.
22 years ago, I was working in Lower Manhattan on a project helping to revitalize the community after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And people were trying to rebuild the businesses and get people to move back downtown. And we were building a website in the area to help people learn about different things that you could do. And we were starting the website launch, and I got a phone call from an 80-year-old woman who said, "I want to come to the website launch, but I'm not sure. One, I'm not quite sure what the web is. And two, I don't know if I would feel welcome at a thing about the internet." And so I asked her name, which was Pearl, and I said, "You've got to come to the event." Now it was a challenge, like, are you going to be welcome in this thing? And so she came, and I offered to teach her what I thought was going to be anything you need to know about technology. And so the next Monday morning, she showed up at my office with her breakfast in a napkin at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I did a little tutorial for her. And I said, "Pearl, here's the mouse, and there's the computer. I want you to take the mouse, and I want you to point at that button at the top of the page." And so she took the mouse, and she picked it up off the desk, and she pointed at the top of the page. And I said, "Okay, Pearl, put the mouse back down on the desk," because I didn't understand that she hadn't actually done she didn't grow up with video games. And so the idea that you're using something with your hand and it's changing something on the screen was a new thing for Pearl. And so one thing led to another, and she started coming to my office every Monday morning at 8 o'clock for a year. And we worked together to learn about what she could learn with technology and what I could learn about how she was learning and what she could do with it. And she graduated to the point where she had email, and she got a computer in her assisted living, which I remember crawling under her desk in her apartment and setting up for her. And we used to do these classes together. And eventually I realized that there weren't any nonprofits focusing on this intersection between aging and technology. You know, we're living in this time where we've added more years to the human lifespan in the last several generations than in the previous all of human history. So people today are, if your life expectancy, if you reach 65 now, is well into your 80s in America. And we haven't quite figured out how to structure all of that activity and all the supports and the things that we're doing. All of our educational experiences are front-loaded in the first 25 years of our lives. A lot of our social building happens at the workplace or earlier. A lot of our culture seems to tip toward younger people. And so we're learning to build this kind of future of aging and learning what that looks like. And we're all still kind of beginners at it. And at the same time, we have this technology revolution that's happening simultaneously, where we have everybody getting online. We have people doing Zoom. We've got e-commerce and smartphones and all that activity. And yet there's this disconnect between the population of older adults who often struggle with technology and all that technology has to offer. Younger people they grew up around it. They tend to be a little bit less beaten down by people criticizing them when they don't know something. And they don't need as much slow on-ramping for people that are beginners. So we found that people over 60 tended to need shorter classes. They needed longer periods of time to learn things. We needed, the content needed to be very relevant to what older learners needed. So if you're teaching somebody to go online and the site that you bring them to is, a video of some teen, star that they're looking at that's not relevant to their lives, it's not as engaging. Whereas you bring people to a site and they're learning something that's more relevant to their interests and needs, it's much more engaging. Sounds very simple, but you'd be surprised how many programs don't make that calculation when they put together the programming. So we designed a curriculum which we started teaching for free. We realized there's already enough barriers for older people to deal with technology. If I'm asking them to then pay an additional fee so that I can come help them, that's not really going to help very well. So we created the nonprofit to raise money to teach free classes. We taught free classes all over New York City to start with. I am from New York City, so try not to hold that against me. But we then realized that it went very well, and in 2013 we started our own community center called Senior Planet. It was the country's first technology-themed community center focused on for older adults. And so we made the rule we would serve anybody over 60. Now we've actually brought the age down to anybody over 50. And anyone can come in and take free classes without restriction, and we'll help you. You don't have to be poor, you don't have to be a citizen, you don't have to be a college graduate. We can work with anybody. And our slogan is aging with attitude. Bring yourself and be yourself, and we'll find a way to work with you. So that program took off and started, very quickly we were serving thousands and thousands of people in New York City. And we started moving outside of New York with new programs. And in about 5 years, we built 5 new states where we were able to do programs. We did a little bit in Florida at the time, but I always wanted to do more. And in 2019, as we all know, after COVID happened, the whole country was really struggling with technology. We were approached by AARP. And AARP had a technology program, but it really wasn't what they wanted it to be. And they were looking for a nonprofit partner to become an affiliate, which is a very unusual, sort of almost like a nonprofit merger kind of thing. And they approached us and offered us to become an AARP affiliate. There's only 4 affiliates, and one of them is the AARP Foundation, so it's kind of a big deal. And so we joined up with them in 2020, and 2021 was our first year there. And we grew from 5 states almost overnight into a 50-state program. And so today, we've really grown the initiative. So I have 80 staff working out of our headquarters. Last year, we taught 670,000 participants online and at over 600 locations around the country. And we were able to launch additional Senior Planet centers. There's one in Miami, so we finally got to Florida with one. I know it's not Sarasota, but it's the right state anyways. And we also have one in Denver, and we've been working on different kinds of partnerships. And so one of the things that we've really, doing a time check here, all right. One of the things that's been really interesting about the work is we've been able to grow our impact with these sort of partnerships. And so one thing I'll just talk briefly about is, as a kind of entrepreneur, nonprofit entrepreneur trying to make a difference, we've learned that when you partner with the right kinds of organizations and you use different strategies to work with your participants, you can get to pretty big scale pretty fast. So one thing was the AARP relationship, which allowed us to work with all their 50 states. They also give us some support financially, and then we do fundraising from philanthropic sites and from government and everybody you can possibly imagine. But we also came up with a model where we said, we want to be in every community in the country, but we can't hire staff to do that. Like, how many technology trainers am I going to put on my payroll? But we have an amazing curriculum. We have hundreds and hundreds of modules of curriculum that we've been developing that are how to use an iPad, or how to use a smartphone, or how to stay safe on the internet. We have it in Spanish, we have it in Chinese, we have it in Haitian Creole. So why don't we take all of the curriculum and expertise and make it available to community partners for free? So we'll get libraries and senior centers and housing organizations. They can apply to OATS, and we will give them a 5-week training, because you don't want to just give them the curriculum and they don't know how to use it. You make sure that they're trained and that they've had a chance to really understand it. So we give them 5 weeks worth of support. It's a virtual training. And then at the end of the 5 weeks, we license the curriculum to them for free for a whole year. And then they can renew every year. And all they have to do is share the data back to us to show how many people they serve, and the satisfaction and self-reported benefit rating that the people make. We don't gather private information about the participants. You don't have to register for our classes. We don't gather private information from the partner sites about participants. What we want to know is that we're making a difference out there, and we can keep ourselves accountable for that. That program has now grown to 500 locations around the country. There are a whole bunch in Florida. I don't think there's one in Sarasota. But your second takeaway, so the takeaway number one is when older adults learn technology, you have to think about it through the lens of aging, and you'll make a really much more progress if you think about it in terms of context. The second takeaway is if you have a library in your community, or you have a senior center, or you know somebody who has a non-commercial entity, we don't do it with for-profit companies, but any community organization, they can go to Senior Planet and go to licensing, and they can take that class. I believe, so seniorplanet.org is the website. Just do a / and the word licensing, and then you can email us, and we can help you with that. If you can't get it, you can call the hotline, and they will also help you find the licensing people. I have people sitting at their desks that, like if you called today, they would help you set up a site. So we're very interested in growing licensing because it's a free program, it's non-commercial, we have a very high, I don't know if anybody here has ever heard of Net Promoter Score as a way of measuring satisfaction. Anybody here? So Net Promoter Score is what a lot of businesses use. Like if you have a good experience with your car or a good experience with your hotel, they say, would you recommend this to another person, to like a friend or family member? A good Net Promoter Score for a business is like 50, like 50%, is 50 people more than would not recommend. Our Net Promoter Score with Senior Planet is an 88 last year. So people are very, very happy with the program. They really enjoy it. If you do go to Miami, our site in Miami is Senior Planet in Miami. It's at Wynwood, and it's also free and really elaborate and wonderful. The other ways that we've gone to reach scale are doing classes online. A lot of people said, well, older adults aren't going to learn online. It's too weird. The digital interface is a problem. We actually were able to create, during COVID, we got the city of New York to give out 10,000 free tablets. And when the tablets arrived at people's apartments, they were for the housing authority residents. When the boxes arrived, we knew what day they were going to get delivered, and we set up a call center at Senior Planet to call them and say, we'll teach you over the phone how to unbox this thing, because nobody could do home visits because of the virus. And we were able to work with, we reached 9,700 people on the phone and helped them do the unboxing. And our staff would say, like, open the box and you'll see a thing in there, and take it out, and and you'll find an on switch. And we would go through all of that very carefully and patiently with people. Once they got online, we could teach them using Zoom as a channel, and we were able to teach thousands of people how to use the technology that way. We were also able to measure the difference because not everybody took the class. The class was voluntary, so about a quarter of the people took the class. And we were able to track their benefits in terms of their social outcomes. And we brought in some researchers from Cornell University. And then we had another group that we used as a control group that didn't take the class. And we could find that the people that took a class made more friends. They were actually, each of them, we asked, did you meet any new people during this period of time? And they had twice as many new friends that they had generated from just meeting people online or reconnecting with old people that they've been out of touch with. We also found that their depression scores, which we asked about, were stable. And during COVID, the control group actually got worse. People were lonely and they were isolated. But if you took a class and you got engaged with a little bit of the technology, it helped people do better. And then the last thing that we did in terms of trying to make a big difference was we advocated for more support from the government for lower income people that were not on the internet. It was called Aging Connected. And one of the questions is, how many older people are not on the internet? We know that there's a problem, but we don't know how big the problem is. And amazingly, until 2019, nobody had actually done any research to say what percentage of people over 65 are not on the internet compared to people under 65. So we did a report. We found that about 42% of older Americans, people over 65, do not have wireline internet at home, which is about 15% higher than the younger population. So there's a big gap there in terms of broadband participation. We just ran the numbers again about 2 months ago now in our headquarters, and it's gotten a little bit better, but it's still about 1 out of every 4, about 25% of people over 65 don't have broadband. Some of them have cellular service, which is, can still get you on the internet, but the gold standard is to have wireline if you can pay for it and afford it and get it. So we advocated at the time with AARP to push for government subsidies for low-income people, and the federal government actually was thinking about it, and we were able to get them to, to provide some support for that. And the federal government created 2 subsidy programs that eventually reached about 7 million people, helping lower income people get on the internet, not just seniors, but also younger people. And that program sunsetted last year. It was called the Affordable Connectivity Program. One of the questions is, for the future of all of this, because somebody asked about the future. I think it was Pam that asked about that. The future, was that you? So one of the things that we may look at going forward is, there is a lot of conversation in Washington to try to bring back some of these subsidies or expand what was a subsidy program designed for telephone access to apply to the internet. So there's a whole thing going on, they call it lifeline reform or universal service reform. And there are efforts to bring lower income people online that way. At the moment, we're in a kind of lull because there's been a lot of changes in Washington. The old program got sunsetted even a year ago, so we're all still kind of waiting to see where they're gonna come with it. But there is a advocacy and a agenda item here around helping support lower income people to get on the internet, and older adults are a really important target for that work. See what we do online is probably the easiest way. Your takeaway should be, go to seniorplanet.org and just look at the classes that we're teaching. Right now, as I'm speaking, there's a class called Morning Stretch, which regularly draws 500 older adults to do physical fitness together on a Zoom class, which is a total blast. And people, they have a half hour where they do some fitness and some stretching and some activity, and then they chat on the line for another 20 minutes or half hour together with the trainer there. They do birthday parties and stuff. It's really cool. But we do virtual travel trips to the Great Wall of China, where people have a live tour guide. We do programs on the future of artificial intelligence. We do programs on, we have a podcast called Aging Rewired, which has an 80-year-old journalist who's amazing, who interviews people about technology and aging. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff. It's meant to be a digital community. It's about 500,000 people a year visit the site. So you should be the 500,001st person, and you can come on. We encourage that. But coming up in the future, there was a big effort for the federal government to close the digital divide with broadband, what they were calling digital equity initiatives, but the word equity is now a political football. Some of those programs have been suspended, but there are still billions of dollars of federal resources that are going to the states this year, and every state has an allocation that's been allocated to them for what's called it's through the Department of Commerce, and it's the Digital Equity Act money. And so Florida has an allocation, and in theory, Florida can also be doing some local grants. So if you're interested in your community activating and working with these kinds of topics, you may consider talking to the state broadband office and asking if they're planning to make grants around digital equity, because it's federal money. It only happens about every 10 years. The federal government gets all excited about broadband access. They issue a bunch of grants, and then they forget about it after that. So you have a short window of time to focus on that in the state of Florida. And then the last thing is the effect of artificial intelligence and AI. So we've been really active working on kind of cutting edge technology at Oates. Part of our job is to kind of keep track of future trends. And last year we partnered with OpenAI, which is the main AI company in the US, and they're a funder of Oates. And we were able to get their engineers to help us deliver training to people in community sites. So again, you've got librarians and senior centers and people doing program level work. And older adults are coming in the door and saying, I don't know what AI is, and can you tell me about it? And if the librarian isn't trained, then everybody's just staring at each other. So we got AI to help us develop some curriculum. We developed about 8 different courses that we taught. We were able to re-grant some resources to local we re-granted about $100,000 to local parties, and the local entities were able to use that to support training. And now we're looking at another round of how to use AI in communities. And when you think a little bit about what the benefit of this, somebody asked about the benefits again when I was chatting with you earlier. Imagine what AI can do for things like signing up for disaster preparation, getting people to be aware of the most up-to-date information about potential natural disasters, to be visible so that you can get rescued, to be able to, I'm very interested lately in data vaults where you can protect your information in your house by going around taking photographs of things and putting it on a site that's protected by a password. So if your house is damaged, you'll be able to go to the insurance company and say, here are pictures of all the things in my house that I had there before the hurricane, and here's documentation about how much they cost or what they are, and now I'd like to file a claim. And it's much easier to do that if you have records of all of that stuff, and technology helps you do it. And AI is one of the tools that's driving some of that opportunity. I recently was interviewing some people in an organization in Maine that that supports volunteers who provide transportation rides for people who can't drive cars. And technology is an incredible driver of a program like that because it allows us to connect the volunteers to the people in need, and also to manage a program like that so it's more safe and secure for people. Programs like that can expand all across the country, providing really high quality benefits to people without necessarily requiring billions of dollars in federal investment that may not be coming this year. So there's a future with some of this technology when we think about what older adults need. And one of the things I'm really interested in lately is thinking about a sort of community-wide plan for aging. When you think about the fact that many communities now are going from 15% people over 65 to maybe 30% of people over 65, or some counties close to 50%, we need to start thinking about how people are growing old together. What kinds of technology should we be supporting so that you can get the services you need when you need them in a flexible way, whether it's home care or transportation or financial support, supporting the healthcare providers who are providing a lot of the localized services as well, so that people get safe and secure and up-to-date, accurate health support, and also supporting things like getting people to be more physically active. One of the things that we found with older adults is one of the critical factors in people living well is how much are you moving around every day? How much are you, some people it's chair yoga, some people it might be going out for a jog, but we can find ways to use technology to support people to learn. I actually just got one of those Apple Watches recently, and every day it buzzes at me and tells me I'm not walking enough. So, we're looking to kind of build a tech-infused future that can help us age better together. Okay, we've got about 8 minutes for questions, so I hope you prepared them because I'm waiting. Let's see one over here.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I'm curious if somebody had a group or organization and they wanted to try to develop, for lack of a better word, let's say a franchise of this sort of training. Is there a process in place for something like that?
I mean, the licensing program is pretty close to a franchise option for you because it allows you just to basically use the curriculum in as many sites as you want to. Many of our partners they have multiple sites, so it could be like there's a group in Austin, Texas, that's using it. That's like I guess it's an Urban League center, but they have 6 or 7 sites in the community, and so they're able to get one license partnership with us, and then they just bring all their trainers onto the course, and we teach them that way. So it gives you access to all of it. If you wanted to do more, we can always scheme with you to figure out a way to raise some additional money for it. But yeah, you can build onto that, and then the curriculum's taken care of, and the training and support is. Be happy to help you with that.
Hi, I'm Susie. I really, really appreciate your work, and it's very relevant to our community here. In the communities in which you serve, how do you go about reaching underserved and underrepresented communities? Have a special toolkit that you share with the communities that are licensed?
We have we provide outreach materials for all the licensing partners. They're packaged directly in we set up a bunch of years ago, we got a grant from the Consumer Technology Association, which runs CES, which is that big technology event in Las Vegas every year. And we created what's it called? It's called the Partner Portal, and it's a whole repository of everything that we have available for the trainings. When you want to teach a class on staying safe on the internet, you go to the Partner Portal section if you're a licensed partner, and it will have everything in one section that includes the curriculum, the trainer's guides, the outreach materials. Everything's available in English, virtually everything's in Spanish as well as English, and then we have a lot of curriculum in Chinese, Vietnamese, and Haitian Creole. But we are also really interested in this issue of how to reach older people. So we're experimenting at Senior Planet with different outreach strategies to figure out things like how much does direct mail work, because you can send we can send postcards or letters to people or flyers. It works in certain ways, but it's a little bit expensive. We're also doing things like hosting, like just last week I approved a little kiosk that we're putting at Walgreens and at the different pharmacies where when you go to wait for your medication, that you'll see like an advertisement for the program and a little QR code and a phone number that you can call. It's very important to find people where they are, and it's a trick with older people because I used to work a lot with Comcast in their Internet Essentials program, and they were working with kids, and it was like, oh, we want to get 1 million young people on the internet. Well, you know where the kids are because they're in school for the most part. So they would go to the local schools and they would partner with the school system and give everybody free, low-cost internet. And the kids were there and they would come home with the flyers. Well, there isn't a place like that where you can find every 65-year-old in the neighborhood or every 80-year-old in the neighborhood. So you have to find ways to reach people through various institutional partners. We do a lot of advertising in local newspapers, which turns out to be incredibly valuable. So if you you'd be surprised how many people show up at classes with a clipped out class advertisement from the Plattsburgh Press Republican or whatever the most, your local paper is. That's an affordable way to get access to information out to people. We do local radio interviews where we'll talk to people about the classes that are going on, what's going on. And we work a lot with local public officials. So we'll teach a class. I'm sure this won't be a mystery to you, but your local public officials would love to come to your class and hand out the certificates when people graduate because they get a chance to meet people and showcase the value of their work in the community. And so when you do something like that, then you can ask them to then help advertise the next round of classes through their networks. And people follow a lot of those, the email threads and things like that. But there's not a silver bullet to it. And some of it's also the tone when you do the outreach. We're learning that people want a more positive tone in the messaging. So if you put out a flyer and say, don't get scammed, learn how not to have your identity stolen, people are a little freaked out by that and they don't come to the classes because it feels very negative. Whereas if you talk about, we're having a special reception for people learning how to use your phone to have a better, more independent lifestyle or learn how to age in place. And as part of that, you'll put on the topic, safety and security and avoiding scams, people feel a little bit more welcomed and it's a little more encouraging. So some of it is the way it's presented. The photographs are really important, making sure if you're reaching people that are underserved in your community and they may be people of color or they may be Spanish speakers, make sure that that's represented on the flyers so that they feel welcome. I know that sounds like you know this already, but you'd be surprised how often people just don't think about it when they're putting together that material and it really matters. Sure. Go to this side, yeah.
In reaching out to these communities, in the past, I worked with Microsoft and doing some of the senior residential communities. Some of the senior clubs,
Yep.
But one of the things that I noticed was the accessibility sometimes, not just for the content, but to be able to use the device in a way that was going to be easy for them.
Yep, yep.
So a button may not be as big as it should need to be, or something of that nature. Is that something that your organization focuses on?
It is. It's a really important question, partly because what we've learned, what you're getting at is that distinction between aging and disability and usability. And so when people have a significant disability, and my daughter uses a wheelchair, I spend a lot of time with the disability world, sometimes they need somebody who's an expert with it. So if you have a local partner most of people's real challenges are visual, and with hearing, and then you have people with cognitive challenges. Each of those areas is a specialization, and what I would look for is somebody who's really good at, if there's somebody who's really blind or really deaf or really cognitively impaired, so much so that they can't just use the adaptive elements, you need an expert to help them, and that's not us. We are not specialized in those areas. We partner all the time with different organizations, and it's very regional. However, the vast majority of people that have impairments have mild impairments. I don't hear so great, right? So I sometimes use my Apple headphones to pick up audio, and you can set your phone somewhere and do things like that. I increase the screen size on my phone or on my computer. Those adaptive tools, we do that all the time. And we work really well with our team and also the people at the licensing partner sites, and our hotline as well can help you find an adaptive setting for the specific challenge that a person is having, and we do that very commonly. So I will point out that there's a hotline on seniorplanet.org, so if you go to seniorplanet.org, that hotline number is there. just call it. It's free. I've got 10 people sitting behind desks all day. They're happy to try to help you. Most of the time they can find out what you need and you'll get to a solution there. We don't have time for one more, do we? I'm getting canceled up here. I'm happy to chat more about this with folks. I know I want it to be a dialogue. I'm learning as much from you as you're learning from me. So I'll be around some today for a bit, and I'd love to continue the conversation. Thank you guys so much for doing this. It's really
Thank you.